Adventures with Superman. Episode 4. Let's take a trip to Ivo Tower, you say. And it's your boy Icon with a DC animated TV review. And Lois is still griping over Superman being a fraud. And she's still calling him a liar. Because remember the last episode, she had the interview with him, and Clark gave her absolutely nothing in the interview. And then she's like, he's such a liar. And then she's trying to, like get the dirt and get the secrets and everything with Superman. But Perry White shows up. He busts into the room. He tells the interns to come upstairs. And then he tells them that there's this big gala that's happening. And he wants them to actually do some real reporting and go down to the gala and interview Dr. Ivo. Now, prior to me watching this particular episode, they did a commercial because there's this like documentary. I believe it's a documentary. It's on Max right now, and it's regarding like the DC universe, like the comics, the cartoons, movies, etc. But when you watch the commercial for it, because they stress this over and over and over again, there was a moment during that whole commercial where somebody said, we can't stay stuck in the past. We have to bring these characters to the 21st century, talking about the DC universe and all the DC characters. And they did that perfectly in this particular episode, because when Lois, Jimmy, and Clark went down to the gala to go interview Dr. Ivo, and Lois, I'm like, I don't know if she's Asian now, because I thought she was maybe Spanish because she had a little tan on her. But judging the outfit that she wore when she went to the gala, I was just like, is Lois supposed to be Asian? It's like, now I'm a little unsure. Anyway, so they go down to the gala, and then when they see Dr. Ivo, he was basically, because like the thing is, in the DC lore, what we know Dr. Ivo is the guy that creates the Amazo robot. But he's always been like this old guy, this old like bumbling like feeble person. They took the Dr. Ivo character and they basically made him Steve Jobs. And they brought his character into the 21st century because he was this tech genius, and he was just like, yes, I've got Amazo tech, I've got Amazo, because he has Amazo tech, so that's a foreshadow. He's like, I got Amazo tech, I got Amazo phones, Amazo earbuds, like Amazo iPads. So it's only a matter of time before we get Tio Moro, and I'm actually looking forward to Tio Moro. Tio Moro is basically, he's the guy that does the nanotechnology, and him and Ivo were always supposed to be rivals. But they turned him. But that's how you take these characters into the 21st century. You take a character like Dr. Ivo, who was based like some old, quirky Dr. Emmett Brown, Back to the Future type person. You bring him into the 21st century, and you turn him into Steve Jobs, and turn Amazo into a tech company which can relate to every single thing that's going on in today's world and society. So kudos to y'all for that. Like, whoever came up with that idea, like, bless you, because that was pretty dope. But the problem is, Ivo's a dick, and there were things that Clark was bringing up, because he said that there were fires that were magically happening on a lot of Ivo's competitors. There was like some misdevious under the table shenanigans that was going on, and but Perry White told Clark, he was just like, well, we don't have the proof of that, so we don't want to like judge this guy without actually having proof, because instead of this paper, we deal with facts. So when they're down there, Lois and Clark and Jimmy, like, they're trying to be reporters because this is their first time. This is their big break about being reporters. And while they're there, it's not going very well, because Cat Grant was originally supposed to do that assignment, but then she ended up giving it to the interns. Well, giving it to Perry, and then Perry gave it to the interns. But Cat had wrote specific questions for them to ask certain people during the party. Lois changed all the questions. She was walking up to like the mayor, the police chief, like company CEOs, and she was like, tell us about the corruption, tell us about you cheating on your wife, tell us about the scandal, blah blah blah. And like, nobody wants to talk to her now, because like hold on, like, you all up in the business. She's too like in like everybody's business, so now nobody wants to talk to her. She gets a little upset. She goes in the corner and she's like, oh, I'm failing as a reporter and everything. And then Clark was just like, not really. He said, but he's like, but just do what Perry told you to do. He was like, stop being nosy, because he said that because of you, he had a chance to actually become a reporter and do some real reporting. So he was just like, you know what you're doing, but just kind of like just reel in a little bit. And then that's when Dr. Ivo came on stage, and then Clark went to go interview Dr. Ivo. When he went up to Dr. Ivo, and I thought this was going to be a moment where his super hearing had kicked in, because Dr. Ivo was talking to one of his board members, and the board member was basically saying, you're out, Ivo, the board is going to vote you out. And then he was like, because the company's broke. And then Ivo was like, well, it's my company and you can't vote me out of my own company. And they're going back and forth. And then when Clark had showed up, Ivo said to him, he was just like, oh, how about me and you have a seat in the VIP lounge? We bring some women in there, and you'll magically forget anything that you heard with me talking to one of my board members. And I was just like, how does Ivo know Clark even heard anything at all? But again, that would have been the perfect time to introduce his hearing, like his super hearing, you know, because they could have showed him ear hustling, you know, like the entire conversation. So now Ivo's basically just like, yeah, just come with me, like, you know, we'll party, whatever. We'll get some of the hot chicks to come with us. And then the camera panned to Lois, and he was just like, well, not her. He was like, woo, he's like, she's a doll again, like she's not refined or something. So now, because he dissed Lois, Clark's all in his feelings now, and then he got mad, and he was just like, yeah, Ivo, let's talk about the corruption, let's talk about the wildfires, let's talk about how your company's being bankrupt. And then Ivo was just like, slow down, cowboy. He's just like, you know what? He said, I'm gonna put you in the special VIP press section, and I'll be there in a minute, which was security basically throwing Clark out of the building. And then when they threw Clark out of the building, Lois let him back in. The two of them sat down. They had like a nice little conversation. She talked about her failures as, you know, as a reporter. And we also got a reference to her dad, General Lang, which, and you know, and the thing is, when her dad called her and she ignored the phone call and she gave Clark the speech about how she's a disappointment to her father, I was just like, well, shit, we might actually get a Lucy, you know, like a Lucy cameo with like Lucy and the dad and everything. Cause I forgot all about the Lane family. So that'd be interesting. Like because the father called her on the phone, you would have to think he's going to show up on the show at some point. And again, if he brings little sister Lucy with, you know, with him too, I think that'd actually be cool. So Clark actually almost told her that he was Superman, and then he stopped when she said that she hated Superman because if it wasn't for Superman lying to her during the interview, she could have been a reporter now. And then that's when Clark told her, he was like, you are a reporter. He said that, he's like, you're a good reporter, and everything that you did, he said, everything that I am right now is because of you. He's like, you make me a better person, blah, blah, blah. And then while the two of them were talking, they found a secret laboratory that had Ivo's secret experiments in it. So they go down, like, they basically, like, they were looking at the whole thing. They were looking at all the experiments, stolen tech, you know, things of that nature. They go back upstairs to bust Ivo or to get Jimmy to go take pictures of everything. And then they see Ivo putting on a suit. So he puts on like this purple suit and he goes upstairs to confront the audience. And when he confronts the audience, he was like, yes, ladies and gentlemen, me, Dr. Ivo, you know, the CEO of Amazo Tech. I'm going to introduce my new technology, the parasite suit. And I actually cracked a smile when he said that, because it's dope that they've merged two characters together. They've merged Dr. Ivo with the Parasite, because the Parasite, as we know, is a character that has the ability to suck up the power of Superman. Ivo basically created the Parasite character as a suit that can drain the energy of, you know, the kinetic energy of anything that it fights. So he has the suit on, and then now he's like, now that I'm wearing the suit, I'm gonna kill my CEOs for trying to kick me out of the, you know, trying to kick me off the board. And then while they're fighting, like, Clark dips, he turns into Superman, you know, he flies into action, he's fighting Dr. Ivo in the Parasite costume, and while Clark is fighting him, he was telling everybody, he said that my suit can absorb his energy and throw it right back at him, because he's like, I'm the Parasite. He kept, like, stressing the fact that he's the Parasite. So then, but then after a while, like, Clark had figured it out. Well, Lois and Jimmy, like, in an effort to help him, they went upstairs, and I guess they turned off the absorbing power of his suit, which put him on an even playing field with Clark. And then when Superman at this point, when Superman was fighting him, Superman realized that his suit is getting powerful. The more Clark hits it, the more Clark punches it, the more Clark does, you know, like any physical damage to it. He noticed that he's getting stronger. So then Clark just stopped fighting him. He was just like, you know, he just started dodging, moved out the way. And then Dr. Ivo was getting upset. He was just like, why won't you fight me? Because he was like, I'm not going to give you what you want. You know, he's like, I'm not going to give you what you want. And then after that, his suit powered down because it wasn't getting any kinetic energy in return. But then something would hate, and this had nothing to do with Clark, because this can't be one of those situations where Dr. Ivo's like, oh, I was the rich, most handsomest man on the planet until it's you, Superman, you ruined my life. Clark didn't touch him. Superman didn't fight him. Superman didn't touch him. The boy's suit just malfunctioned. It basically like melted him on the inside. And when they opened the suit and took him out of it, then he actually looked like Parasite now, because his body's all purple and his face is all scarred. So they merged two characters where they basically turned Ivo into Parasite, because there's going to be a moment later on where Ivo is in prison, and then Ivo realizes he now has the ability to absorb the energy of anybody that he touches, and you're going to turn Ivo into Parasite. So when we actually get the Amazo robot, who knows? But then, you know, so they wheel Ivo off to the hospital or prison. I was unclear about which was which. And then, you know, Superman disappeared. Clark shows up again. He tells Lois and Jimmy, let's take pictures of everything downstairs in his private basement, because we'll bust him with all the stuff he has hidden in the basement. And then when they go down to the basement, basement, they realized everything was cleaned out because somebody, Amanda Waller, I'm assuming Task Force X, went and cleaned that whole shebang out because they were probably the ones supplying Ivo with the technology to make the parasite suit. Anyway, and regarding the parasite suit, and I'm just going to go out and say this. Am I the only one that when Ivo was just like, hey, here's my parasite suit, was I the only person who was like, isn't that Zarkon from Voltron Legendary Defenders? Like, the artist that does the My Adventures with Superman, it has to be the same artist that did the Voltron Legendary Defenders on Netflix, because Ivo in that suit looked exactly like Zarkon. I'm talking about to a T. He looked like a member of the Galra Empire, like Zarkon, Lotor, when Lotor had the I'm gonna post a picture of the two of them side by side, and you tell me which is which. He looked like they basically ripped off Voltron, so I think it's the same artist that does both shows. So anyway, so then after that, then Lois and Clark, they're outside. Lois was a little chilly, so Clark put his jacket on her, and then the two of them walked off into the sunset and left Jimmy behind. And now they're gonna do a whole storyline where Jimmy feels like the third wheel because Lois and Clark basically dipped on him. Now, earlier in the episode, Lois and Jimmy, they were trying to figure out who Superman is. And Jimmy came up with the idea, instead of looking for credible news outlets and news sources, he said, let's look in the tabloids, because the tabloids will actually have the truth about him. And they had all these books about a flying boy from Kansas or a magical angel that saved somebody. And when Clark saw one particular article that said the flying boy from Kansas, he took that page out of the book because he's from Kansas, obviously, and he doesn't want somebody to put two and two together and bust him on what he's doing. But the problem is, when he took that page out of the book that said the flying boy from Kansas, he took that paper and put it in his jacket pocket, and then he later took that same jacket and he gave it to Lois because she was cold. So later on, when Lois went back to the Daily Planet, she still has his jacket, and then she saw the book, and she was like, oh, there's a page missing from the book. And then she was going through the book, and then it was saying all these things about, like, the flying angel, the savior of Kansas, the boy, like this, that, and the third. So she starts thinking and trying to, like, put two and two together, and then she accidentally goes in his pocket, and she found the page that had the flying boy from Kansas. So two and two together. I like the fact that this Lois Lane isn't stupid. But you put two and two together, she was just like, well, shit. Why would Clark take a page out of a book talking about a flying boy from Kansas? Wait a minute, Clark is from Kansas. And then she put two and two together, and then she was just like, shit, Clark Kent is Superman. This episode should have been called That Escalated Quickly, because we're only in episode 4, and Lois knows that Clark Kent is Superman. Lois and Clark are already dating, like they kissed each other in the episode, like they actually said they were on a date or whatever. So this is escalating very quickly. But something's gonna happen. Maybe Martian Manhunter will show up, because I was actually talking to I Kill Your Vibe 4408. We were going back and forth in the comment section on my last episode for My Adventures with Superman, because we were talking about who we think will be the first Justice League character that'll pop up. And he said Bruce Wayne, which would make sense. Like, it would make more sense that it's Bruce Wayne before Batman, if that makes sense to y'all. But but at this point, maybe it's Martian Manhunter, because if Lois is on Clark's scent now, thinking he's Superman, you gotta, because the thing is, just because she came to the realization that Clark Kent is Superman doesn't mean that this is actually going to happen. It doesn't mean that she's going to bust him and she's going to know from this point on in the show. Like, Clark's going to have to do something to throw the scent off the dogs, and maybe Martian Manhunter shows up, because they did that on Supergirl, where Martian Manhunter turned into Supergirl so Cat Garrett wouldn't find out that she really is. But that was, I don't know, that was it. But we'll see what happens. That was very cool. I like this particular episode, and thank you for tuning in. The Zarkon thing made me laugh, but again, turning Ivo's character from some sniveling old, like, Dr. Wily geezer into, like, a hip, cool, young tech genius, I thought that was a stroke of genius. I am so, like, the biggest thing about this show that I'm loving, aside from the character development, like, I'm just loving the villain introduction. So I want to see where all this goes, and at what point Lex Luthor shows up, and where we continue here with My Adventures with Superman. So check out my other videos, guys, because I got Marvel's Secret Invasion on the channel, which is about to have their season finale coming up on Wednesday. Harley Quinn starts on Thursday. I thought Harley Quinn started Tuesday. It actually starts on Thursday. And we're still doing Warrior for you Warrior fans. And hopefully we'll have some other cool things in the pipeline as we continue to move forward, because for the love of God, I'm still waiting for Blue Beetle. So till next time, guys, till next week for more adventures of My Adventures of Superman. Take care. I'll bump it away as always, and I'm out this.